change what he's doing or change his escape route, he has time to do that. So now what he'll do is just cut between the wedges. That's the only meat of the tree left, right? And once he cuts that off, that tree's going to go in the direction that he has it fell. You can do this with a lean back tree, straight up tree. But it's nice to be able to do this on a forward lean tree because otherwise than that, you're going to chase the hinge. Okay, that's what we used to call it, chasing the hinge.
Or you got to pound wedges for an hour.
Right, you get a smaller hinge so that the tree doesn't bother clear and break off and come down and be a hazard.
Okay, we good? All right. Fun part. Good. That did just what we wanted. Yeah, it's safe now.
Got one hazard overhead right there that we got to watch out for.
We do, right in that maple.
Don't get underneath that.
Yeah, that branch that's hung up there.
Tree because the tree will just sort of pull, but when it's right, so if you got a hinge way and it's supposed to do this, the fibers will pull, and the wider you make the hinges, the more it's going to pull. So you can see that really closely right here. If you look at this, she twisted right there. Otherwise, it wouldn't have done that. You see how you only get some fiber pull on the back of the hinge? You'd like it to be neat the whole way, but the wider it gets, the more fiber pull you get. Now this tree had so much lean that I actually didn't get all the way through it before it decided to go. So we got a little bit of fiber pull right there too. That's a pretty heavy leaning tree. As far as wedging goes, we always use these wedges. Couple things you can do with them. I think my favorite one on these big trees is it's nice to know where you stop your first cut, so that it gives you something to aim for when you're coming around with your second cut. It's a lot easier to see a bright yellow wedge than it is a tiny little cut in a big tree. We use them to, as Robin said, if we've got a tree that with forward lean to it, you don't necessarily need to lift the tree because it's going to do that by itself. But a lot of trees don't do that, right? They stand straight up, or sometimes they got a little bit of back lean. If you've got your wedges pounded in and the tree doesn't want to fall, you just take the back of a felling axe and you beat them in, and the tree will come right over.
Wedge placement is key when you're trying to wedge big trees like this, because if you get this in the wrong place, I don't care how big a hammer you have or how big an axe you have, you just cannot pound it in. So you got to remember that these are made to tip trees. They're not made to pick trees up really, they're made to tip trees. So on a big tree like this, if this tree had a little bit of back lean, I would not want to place my wedge up close to the hinge. I want to place my wedge as close to the back of the tree as I can, because I'm trying to move the tree like this. I don't want to try to pick the tree up. When I get close to the hinge like this, you got so much weight, you're trying to pick the tree up. It's not going to lift to the head. So the closer to the back you get, okay, you're gonna drive the wedge a lot easier. It's going to move the tree a lot easier.
Also, for those of you guys who have run saws before, anybody ever pinch your bar in a tree? Yeah, it happens, right? This will keep that from doing that. Before you ever get to the point where the tree can move, you already have the wedges in place. So when you cut off that last of the wood, and say the tree's leaning back, it's just going to sit down on top of your saw, and then you got to go get another saw. But if you've got your wedges pounded in, you can get your saw out of it and save yourself a saw bar.
So this is a 1-inch wedge, right? So just to give you an example of how much lifting power you have with a 1-inch wedge. If you put this in the back of the tree and you move that all the way in like that, you run out of wedge and you got a 60-foot tree, how much can I move the tree on the top?
I don't think they've covered that.
60 inches. 1-inch wedge on the stump will move the top of that tree 60 inches. That's a lot of lift. If you're using 2 wedges, You can gain on it because you could stack a wedge like this if you wanted to and gain another full inch, okay? You went in like this. Sometimes it's a lot of wedging and a lot of pounding, but
Yep.
in some circumstances you can save yourself a lot of time and get trees to the ground. Because when Charlie's chopping in the woods and I'm on the skidder, I go to the landing. If I'm 15 minutes out to the landing, 15 minutes back, which it usually is that much anyway. If Charlie gets stuck and he doesn't know how to use a wedge, what's he gonna do? He can't work around a tree that's already cut off, standing up straight. And he's got to get trees to the ground when I'm gone. He's just standing there being really inefficient.
Watching trees.
Log bump.
So these things right here are key when you're felling trees.
Yep.
You know, back before I knew how to use one of these, and I logged quite a while before I knew how to use a wedge. I had trees that went where I didn't want them to go. I drive the skidder to trees to knock the tree over with a skidder. That's not really what you want to do. It's very inefficient. If you have a good chopper, he can put trees to the ground with one wedge. He'll have a whole hitch for you when you come back and ready to go. Very
See,
important
efficient
logging.
logging, you have to try and make the next person's job easier. And if he's going to be hauling this, right? If this is a production mode and we want this log out there, he'll put it right straight out through, say, that hole right there. Or we could drag it up through here. But he's got his choice now, right? And the log could go either way he wants it to. If I was to take this and point it out that direction, and he can only pull it, which means how's he going to get it there? You just made his job tremendously harder. Or worse, you get it snagged into another tree like that, damage all your other crop trees, screw everything up, and then he still has to pull it down. So directional felling, sometimes it seems like it takes a couple minutes longer, but it's a classic case that if you work a little bit slower, the job goes a lot faster because it goes the way you want it to go every time, almost every time.
Have you ever walked into a beaver chopping where the beavers had trees just like this? You know, imagine trying to pull those out with a skidder. You'd only do it one at a time. When you go back in the woods with the machine and all the stumps are looking at you like this, and I can hook this one, drive ahead, hook the next one. That's how you get work done, and that's how it's more efficient. Just how you keep the wheels turning. Very important.
So this one,
Lend itself.
yeah. That one, honest to God, that is exactly where I wanted it. I wanted to go right straight between the crowns of those trees and hit the ground right
I think they're off the trees.
Okay, Smarty, right or left?
But it's nice because you protected the oak and the red pine.
Right. Very neat.
Didn't hit the Rotzi guys.
Didn't hit the Rotzi guy. Well, so there's the fun part.
Yeah.
Now comes the not so fun part. Now we go.
Did you bring a
So
tape
don't
measure
kill
with
him.
you?
Yeah, I got one in my truck. I'll go grab it.
Yeah.
Yep, check for hazards, check for lean, escape, hinge, and your clamp.
And these are given to us by workers' comp. Workers' comp.
Mimic, yeah.
Main Mutual Employees Insurance Company.
Oh, I wondered what that stood
They were giving these out to the. What Charlie has to do when he's in the woods, when he's felling trees, or if I'm felling trees, what we like to do is measure the log out, measure the whole tree out, and we'll mark it for the skidder operator. So I'm looking at this tree thinking, will I get a select out of this tree or will I not? At 10 feet,
There's the one big black knot there. If we can get a 10, we can gain them.
if we get a 10, we're at least going to get a number 1.
I would take it below before this one.
But when you start getting up in the board of the knots right here like this, start to grade the wood, so you gotta watch the road. So when you're cutting for grade, like we're not selling these on land run, there's two ways to sell logs. You can sell them on a land run price, where they give you one price for everything, or you can sell on grade, which we're doing right now. We have for the last couple of years. And you try to grade your logs as you cut them. So look at it, go ahead Charlie, see where a 10 takes you on this.
I need to do a 12 because only can sell 10 foot.
So basically, you're making decisions about product right now.
That's right,
Right.
yeah.
And what's your
That is
optimal?
right.
What's your
So
optimal?
what we're trying to do is we're trying to get all the select logs we can.
You should have cut it an inch lower, Charlie. See what that is. Bring it down.
Bring it down here.
So what do you need? You need a 10-foot log? Is that what you said?
No, we can only sell a 10
and an
foot.
inch to that big knot.
What's
So,
that?
Got 12 foot and about an inch to that big knot. He said if we had some 10 foot, they don't want a lot of them, but they'll take a 10-foot select, but they'll only take them from us.
So we
Love
can't
having
cut 10
alumni
foot
as
select.
So he just said this is a
Where's
12
10
feet, but it's a
Fit in
10-foot
shredded
log.
cheese.
Why is the math not adding up? I'm playing devil's advocate.
Amber, it's a little like paper towel math, where the 6 big rolls equals 19 regular rolls, and it never actually adds up. No, what he's saying is absolutely correct. We sell these things by grade, and the grade difference from a select to a number 1 is tremendous. We lose 40%, 30 or 40% of the value by going down a grade. Okay, so it really, really makes a big difference to sell as many good grade logs as you can. So we want to maximize this butt log, maximize those top ones, and really minimize this section right here. So yeah, you run out until the grade changes, right?
And do you cut it right at 10 feet?
Well, 12 foot 4 when they're done. They can't do that if you send them 12 foot and an inch. The wood just isn't cut. So you send them 6 inches at done. Unfortunately for us, the way this tree grew, we're going to take a 10-foot log off the bottom.
So it's worth taking a little time to think through where you're going to buck up.
If your logger doesn't have one of these, buy them one. Right there, what are these? 50 bucks? Something like that. Pay for itself the first day. The first time you take a log that's that big and you send it as a 12-foot grade 2, you could probably run the math on that. He's smart enough to do that. Versus a 12-foot grade 2 log versus a 10-foot grade 1 log. You make it much, much more valuable by shortening it.
And some of you folks have been using these. We were short on D-tapes, but now you see the real intent of what this is used for. Not that you can't use them for measuring diameters like we did, but
So when the logger cuts the tree, he always has the tape hooked to his belt. What you should do is hook on the end like Keith has done. Limb your tree out, not make any measurements yet. Limb the tree out, about 2 or 3 logs. Hold the tape on the tree and see if the tree has crook or sweep. Because this tape will tell you how straight the tree is. And that
so
way
sweep is curve, right? Curvature
right,
of the
if the
tree.
tree's curved, that's going to tell you a little bit more where to cut the tree, how long to cut the log. So it's good to measure out at least 2 logs before you even start thinking about where you're going to cut it off.
So now we got a decision to make, because we got 29 right to here. And now, pretty clearly, we're going to have to stop this log right here. It changes. But we got 29, and 29 is a really common length that we're looking for, because the 29, when you break it down into its pieces, is a 16 and a 12, plus 2 6 inches of trim. So, it gets into that logger math, paper towel math weirdness again. So,
But if you cut a 10 out of the butt,
then you got what, an 18?
It's
So
all
now we got some decision making. Now what?
well, you know what I would do. You tell me what you would do.
They're all
I
different.
would take my chances on the grade trade right here, and I'd cut a 12 out of this and a 16 out of that. That's what I would do.
Leave a little bit of
Because
push for you to breathe.
Because if you cut back on that, if I cut that back 2 feet to make everything even up, I just lost 2 feet of wood up there. I want to try to maximize all the wood I can get out of this tree without losing too much grade. I'm probably going to drop a grade by going to 12 radius, but I'm going to gain because I'm going to have that much more
So
wood.
basically,
Right, so you're giving it away in one
dropping a
hand to get
grade
it
on
back
this one is equivalent to leaving half of it in the wood.
Yeah, that's right.
Price-wise.
That's right. So now we'd have to leave 2 feet on that end to make the 10 footer here, which we don't want to do. So there's a lot of decision making before you even cut your log off and mark it.
Yeah.
Hey, we can make a fun exercise out of this and run the numbers. We could. We've got scaling tapes, right? We've got calculators. We got some sort of price list. Do you want to actually answer the question?
I like that list you just read off. You know, those are all pieces of information you need to make decisions on.
Right, and
So-
I'm not quite mentally nimble enough to make the dollar decision in my head here, but I'm going to guess that it would be smarter to take a 10-foot select and a 16-foot grade 2, right? Rather than a 12-foot grade 1 and a 16-2. But that's
So,
my guess. We've got all the numbers here.
Well, yeah. So the selects are 620 1,000.
Yep.
The ones are 400 1,000.
Okay. So who
And
brought the
twos
scaling
are,
stick?
The 2s and 3s are 300 1,000.
We did say we wanted to talk about scaling, so
We brought a scaling stick. We could do this.
We'll do it.
we have some time. We can do it. See how you make this decision.
First thing I get out
I
of
know
it.
they're all dying to know what length logs they end up with here. But I think it's great that you're talking about different grades, right? Because a log is not just a log. They're not all the same.
The only person that doesn't care what grade it is going to be your truck driver. They get paid on weight, volume, and they don't care if it's pulp or select or whatever.
Cut it off up there?
Yep.
Okay.
We'll cut it off up there.
Well, that's the easy decision.
We'll do it right out there.
Right?
Yeah,
you
great
know
idea.
You, can't
You want to
do-
grab the skidder?
Yep.
Can't go the other way. All right, let's back up a little.
It is. I don't know whose fault that is. Let's blame Jack. He's not here. What I like to see. got it out of the road. And we'll deal with the rest of this. Looks like the lab has moved. I suppose we got to move with it. Well, this may make some of our decisions for us. Sort of hoping they'd roll a little more than that.
Roll this one back a little bit. It's on it this way.
Yep.
It's on.
This is why we brought Rob out here. It's to roll off.
Ordinarily, we like to use diesel-powered things for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like those.
You know, that's okay though, because that's actually out in the trim. They're not supposed to count those. Right, Robin?
That?
Those big knots there in the center, they shouldn't count those because they're in the trim, right?
They won't.
It's interesting though that you'll get to be able to see what the outside and cross section are.
Yeah,
So if
who
you want
asked
to
how
see
far
a
in the
knot
knots go?
cross section, if you're wondering how far into the thing
Yes,
you
who
go.
is it that had that question? There you go, they go right to the center. We just managed to saw one right straight through.
And you can see where the black,
Yep, where it,
where the black
this is-
cross
What a lucky hit.
yeah, so this is where the branch died and turned into a black knot, and here's the red knot. So that is higher grade than that.
So when they start throwing boards out of this, right, and they start going, let's say they start cutting them across like this, right? There'll be a big hole in this one, that'll fall out. There'll be a hole in that one, that'll fall out. This one, it won't. That one, it won't. That one, it won't.
So if it's black, it will.
Yes.
At the part where it's black, where
So
the
in the
edges,
black one, yeah.
where the edges of the knot are black,
Yes.
that's where it'll dry out and they'll
Yeah,
fall out of the
because
board.
this
That's where
wood
if you
right
have,
here
like, a pile of
isn't
2x4s,
really
some of them
molecularly
have the
bonded
little
to this wood right here.
Notch.
Whereas this one is, because these things were both still alive when this was alive.
Yeah, that was a really
makes
nice
sense.
place to cut that. That was a good.
That was fortuitous happenstance.
that-
So
yeah,
what
that was a
does for
good-
the scaler is if there's any knots beyond that, below that, he's got a pretty good idea what they're going to look like now.
Yeah.
So that could change the grade. So when you're scaling logs, what end do you scale the logs from? Does anybody know?
Ooh, I do.
Scale from this end or scale from the butt end?
Small end.
Small end, that's right. Why is that, you think?
Yeah, well, that's a small diameter, so that's just where it cut from inside. Yeah. I don't really know how to explain. It's just it's wider at that end, tapers down, so you cut from the smaller end.
Right,
cut
so
it.
when it goes on to the sawmill, they're gonna start slabbing it right here, right? So that's gonna be a lot bigger slab down there than you got here. So this is where all your wood's gonna come from, you know, all your board count's gonna come from the small end of the tree. So the other thing is, where do you hold the scale stick? Does anybody know?
Just inside the bar.
So should we explain the scale stick first, probably?
Yep, that's a great idea, and also the different standards.
So this is the international scale rule. This is pretty standard for the state of Maine. You got a Maine rule? That's a Maine rule. Some of our mills still use a Maine rule. Most of the mills use international rules. And most scale sticks have a beginning point. Got a little tab on the end of it. That's there for a reason. Okay, it's not so you can grab the log and anything like that. And so that it fits in between the bark and the inside layer there. Okay, so this will fit right in there like that. It'll actually stick in. You don't want to be measuring the bark because the mill doesn't want to buy the bark. They're only going to pay for the tree. Start measuring outside the bark, you get a lot bigger numbers. So when you scale it, well, let's talk about this first. There's a bunch of different.
There are numbers on there.
There's inches on here, so it measure the width in inches. So when you get the width in inches, you put it across here. See where it lays on there. So a tree's always round when you cut them off?
No.
Not always, right? So you got to make two measurements. You're going to make a measurement here. You're going to make a measurement here. This is pretty symmetrical, pretty much the same. So let's say the tree measures out at 25 inches. Okay, so we're in inches. So on the scale stick, it's got length down
So
here.
you're taking
8
the smaller of the two
the smaller of the two. That's right. If you make two diameters like this, you take the smaller of the two. So then you got length of the log on the end of the stick, 8, 10, 16, 14, and 12. So you go to the length of the log. You got a 12-foot log, right?
There.
So it's 25 inches long. So here's 25. So I'm going 12 at the bottom of the scale stick. So that tells you how many board feet are in the log, 340. So if it was a 14-foot log, the one right above it's 400 because it would have more board feet, right? And that's how we get paid. We get paid by board feet. So each one of these logs go on the truck, go to the mill, and there's a scaler in the landing at each mill. It might be 2 scalers. And now they usually do it electronically. They record everything with a voice recorder. They just say what it is, and it keeps track of everything as they go.
Okay, so what did we decide it was? How many board feet?
Oh, I was just guessing, but
No. So it's not really 340?
it is 340.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's 340 board feet, and we get a rate of $400 a thousand
For number one, yep.
for number one. So what's this log worth? Really pretty simple math.
Say again.
So 40 cents a board foot.
40 cents a board foot. Right, we get $400 a thousand board feet. So 40 cents a board foot, 340 board feet. So what's the log worth? It's okay if you use a pencil. I mean,
You got a cell phone, right?
Yeah, everybody's got a cell
Got a
phone.
calculator on it.
I can't do that in my head.
I can kind of guesstimate that.
and actually, when you get the number, jot it down because I want to see something real quick.
Wait, it's 40 cents a board foot?
Board foot.
Yeah,
And then
$400 a thousand comes to 40 cents a board foot.
Is it 136?
340 times 0.4.
136. I did do it right.
What's that?
It is under 36.
Yeah, 136.
Okay, so $136 is what we get paid for. So just for a mental exercise, let's say that we cut this back to a 10-foot,
So what is a 10-foot scale?
right? And just for the sake of conversation, say it's the same width because it doesn't look like it
Yeah,
tapers
doesn't
much.
taper. Yeah, so what's your scale on the 10-footer?
280.
280. And say that was a select, right?
Yep.
That's where we're going. Select, we get 620. So
62.
280 for the 280, did you say?
280, yeah.
280 times 62 cents.
73 bucks.
174, yeah.
Okay. And then the other one was 130.
So would it have been better to send a 10-foot select or a 12-foot grade 1?
So, and we do this in hardwood all the time. If it was a matter of cutting this 2 feet off and leaving it in the woods, if there was something wrong with it, you could actually make more money sometimes.
If you go up to any hardwood log yard and look around, you find big piles of 2-foot pieces because they're buying logs like that have got, you know, a 16-foot or a 10-foot or whatever they've got, and it comes in at one grade, but somebody's going to look at that and go, wow, there's a 9'6" veneer log in there. Just cut this piece of junk off there, this piece of junk off there. The log gets shorter and way more valuable. So
Oh,
if
they
you
got-
don't do it, the mill will.
Well, they got a 10-footer with a defect in it. You cut it back to an 8 and you make money on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it does pay to pay attention.
And you need to know your products and
You do.
prices.
And
each
you
product
make
is different.
Make your best decision.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works out.
You know, probably the easiest thing for us to work up is spruce because there's not a lot of options. Spruce,
Right.
spruce is pretty easy. I mean,
They either buy a spruce log or they don't.
That's pretty much it.
There's no
there's
grading.
no grade in spruce. It's dimension lumber, and
So which species do you grade then?
You grade hardwood and
Hardwood
pine.
and pine.
that's about it.
There's other
In some instances, just poplar hardwood, but poplar at times there's markets for poplar, like veneer market. So same with the hardwood.
and cedar has some grades. There's like most of those are based on size though, and lot, things like that. So there's single stock and then cedar saw log. So, but really, what we grade is pine and hardwood.
What, I don't know if you said this, what species is the most valuable or the one that like people use the most like in homes?
Probably oak is one of the most popular. Sugar maple.
Right, and
For
in a home,
furniture.
there's a lot of pieces to a home. So sort of the answer to that has a lot of different answers.
The higher grade, like for furniture and cabinets and things like that, would be a hardwood grading.
Right, so when you walk into a house, the things that your eyes are going to see,
That you
right?
see.
The flooring, the cabinets, the furniture, sometimes wall paneling. That's the visual grade stuff. For a lot of this is going to wind up, either boards for things that people make,
Foundation.
shelvings or trim, things like that. Now, when you get inside the walls or underneath the floor joists, the parts that you don't see, the structural parts of it, certainly the most important part of the house, but you don't care what
All your framing.
all your framing. You don't care what it looks like,
Yeah.
right? And you don't care if it's got a million knots in it. You just care that it doesn't break. So it either makes the standard or it doesn't.
Right.
And that's why we don't bother grading like spruce, because spruce generally goes into studwood. Fir a lot of the same way. Sometimes hemlock. Those get blasted through, and so when you go into Home Depot and you buy a 2x4, you pay the same price for a select one as you do for one that's got some knots, as long as it makes the structural grade.
Pine used to be more prevalent in houses before they came out with sheathing, like T111 or
Oh yeah, chipboard stuff.
chipboard and things like that. Now they all board into that, or not framing, but board everything in the chipboard.
Yeah, pine's not really strong enough to frame a house with. You couldn't make it out of 2x4s out of pine because your house would probably fall down. But once it's framed up, you can saw the boards and you'll go over it and sheath it with that. But as he said, it's really much faster and more efficient, and lately cheaper to just use OSB or plywood or something.
Getting back
Progress in the last century.
Getting back to the scale stick, there's 3 or 4 different types of scale sticks. And the main stick will measure different than the international stick. They're pretty close.
So this, so the 12-foot, 25-inch tree, the main rule would be 358,
What do I have?
340.
So why are there all these different standards? Why isn't there one?
Because it's what the mill decides on. The buyer decides what he's going to use for a scale stick, and whoever sells wood to him has to agree on that or disagree on that.
And scales were developed in different ways. Some of them were based on actual measurement of logs. Some are based on a diagram of how you could saw boards out of the log. Some are based on geometry.
Yeah, some of them are just based on mill records.
Yep.
They know that when they get a 16-foot, 20-inch top log, this is how much they get out of it. And so, of course, they're going to be different that way. People have different saws, different sawing efficiencies, different mills. So yeah, there's actually almost infinite number of different scaling sticks. Some of them are way more common than others. So which one's legal in Maine? Trick question. All of them.
And does this vary regionally across the U.S.?
It does.
Just so happens, yes, widely.
So some scales deal better with small logs, and some scales deal better with big logs. International Quarter does well with small logs. Doyle does well with big logs, so they use that out in the west where they have bigger trees. So that's part of it as well. Does the scale equate to what the mill will actually saw out of that log? No. It's related, but what the scale actually is an agreed upon unit of measure for commerce. It has nothing to do really with what the mill will actually saw out of the log. Because they will saw much more out of the log than probably we scaled.
We just measured. That's right.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that was a good.
Yeah, if they spend millions of dollars on more
Qualifier.
efficient machinery to get better gains out of their logs, then of course they're going to expect better gains out of it, and not
So-
necessarily pay you for it.
So I'm going to ask the students questions. For the lab report you're working on, what scale did you use? or are you going to use calculating your volumes? International quarter, yeah, very good.
So
Make
if
sure
there
you
is
use
a
that table.
most mills in Maine will use international quarter. There's a few of them that still use some different ones, but so everybody's sort of graduated towards international quarter. And I would think a good reason for that is if there's any dispute and the state Department of Weights and Measures comes in and has to, settle a dispute, guess what scale they're going to use? The international quarter.
And you're calculating your volumes based on estimates from stumpage. So they're trees that are still standing, right? You didn't go and cut down all your trees in order to estimate, get your volumes, right? You did estimation versus actual measurements like we're doing here, so.
Hey, let's measure the top. With this same scale.
Figure out what a number 2 is. $300 a thousand.
So this should help you with your lab report, kind of help you visualize.
I think 2s and 3s are getting the same for them.
Yeah.
This tree didn't taper much, did it? This is still 24 inches.
$300.
Yeah. Okay, so just for the sake of this lab, I think we're gonna ignore this damage right here. There is some cracking in here, and when this gets to the mill, they are gonna deduct us for this, but they're not gonna deduct us a whole lot. Now, we could shorten this back to 16. We could buck it back to a 14 or a 12, but what they're gonna charge us for this little breakage on here is nothing compared to what we're gonna do. Well, no, it's a little bit of. Well, you see, it's pretty angular.
Yeah.
And that's right where this tree split off and broke.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, so they're just going to say, all right. I mean, I don't know what sort of deduction they're going to give us, but they'll knock 30 or 50 board feet off, and it's going to amount to chump change.
Even if it was rod, if it was well combined like that, we'd still send it.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and if there's like a hollow in the center, I mean, we've had hollow trees that you could roll a softball through. Send it, because the wood they want isn't in the middle of the tree anyway. The wood they want is out here where it's clear. So as long as they can get it on the sawmill, they'll run it.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out how long that hole is. That goes in there.
All right, so with this guy, I still got 24. I think about, we'll call it 24 inches. This tree did not taper much. Nice tree. A little bit smaller. We'll go with a smaller number. So that's 425 board feet in this one. Bigger than the last one, right? Well, of course it is. It's longer. So what's the price on a?
300.
Okay, so we got 425 board feet at $300 a thousand. What's this one worth?
127.5. 127.5.
Cool. So $127 for this one. What do we have on that one?
130 something.
There you go. Add the two of them together.
So are you going to do something with the rest of the tree?
Not today, but yeah.
Well, I guess the question is there product still that you can sell?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even though that tree sort of blew apart at the top. But this is a pretty good example. I mean, there's all kinds more work left to do out there, but most of the volume and a lot of the value in these trees is in the bottom. So there we go. What did we get for a combined total dollar-wise on these two logs? Yeah, okay.
So what would you hope to get with that fork that was on the top there?
Well, we'll have to go look at that.
Okay.
It all very much depends on whether it's straight enough to get logs out of. If we got some straight sections in there, we'll take them for logs every time. I don't care if I got to leave coarse woody debris in the woods, whatever. We'll take it for short logs, funky logs, low-grade logs. The last thing that we can sell is pine pulp, and pine pulp pays about as much as it costs to truck it to the mill. So, in fact, right now, by the way, we're shut off for everything in the whole pit. So
we also have to get it there.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you for...
$76 a thousand to get it to the mill.
Yeah.
From here to where we're going.
Yeah. So if we can get enough out of the pulpwood to at least pay for the expense of getting it there, then we'll usually do it. If we can't, then we just chop it up and leave it in the woods for the salamanders and stuff.
So this is obviously not part of the whole operation. So what's your plan for these logs?
Oh, we'll come by with a cherry picker and grab these and take them up and throw them with the rest of our pile.
Okay.
These will wind up in a main sawmill. Probably by the end of the month, they'll be in there.
How long can they sit out here waiting to be taken away?
Well, that's a good question. During these colder months, they can sit for quite a while, but in the summer months, you've got to be really quick about it.
So what does quick mean?
2 weeks.
Was that 2 weeks?
Usually. What's that?
Usually
Yeah, a
2
couple,
weeks.
couple weeks you gotta be quick with pine in the summertime. It gets blue stained really fast.
There we go.
Blue stained, yeah.
Once you get blue stain, your logs are invaluable.
Yep.
Unless
So
you
what's
can find,
blue stain? Why is that a problem?
why is it a problem? Because it stains down through the log. And it's a discoloration, and it is blue in color.
And consumers don't like to buy it because pine is a lumber that you see mostly.
Right, on the open market, when you sell
So
it,
then you've got it already pre-colored for you.
some folks like blue stain.
Yeah, there's if you find a little niche market for, you know, some dude with a little mill in his side yard, or, you know, an artisanal kind of thing, then it's actually kind of pretty. It's like a denim kind of thing.
I went to grad school with a student that was into sculpting, and she was actually looking at specialty woods and actually purposely coloring them and patterning them in
Right.
certain ways for certain types of products.
Well, if one of you fine folks wants to find us a market for blue stained logs, we'd be eternally grateful. But the operational reality of it is we can't sell blue stained logs. We can't sell blue stained logs, and you know, we could throw them in the pulp pile, I guess. They'll go down to Old Town and we'll all get to smell it, but that's about the only benefit.
You need to start a new trendy pattern of like flooring
how
or
many
something.
How many times I wish for that. But
You have a
anyway,
question?
Yeah, I was-
until that
Jesse has a
happens, it
question.
pretty much is what it is.
So what mills do you usually sell to?
Well, let's see. Right now, these will probably go to Robbins Lumber in Searsmont, right? And sometimes,
I made one of the buyers pretty sad this morning because I told him that we weren't going to sell the logs.
we've got buyers that'll come out and look at our logs on the, you know, while they're on the stump, and actually bid on them. Just a little bit unusual, but we grow kind of unusual trees here. We take a little more time, you know, by like a century.
So there's usually three different buyers who come look at our logs. And, they're pretty, I won't say.
Aggressive.
Yeah, they're aggressive. They're competitive. They'd like, one would like to know what the other one paid, you know, but you never can tell them that. So, and it's always tough. I mean, you know, the nice thing about the university forest is most of the buyers in the area and in the state of Maine are UMaine alum. So we know all of them. And sometimes it's tough to say no, but I mean, it's business. You have to say no.
So yeah, we can go look at that. We can go look at that top, and whether or not we actually start flailing and flashing on it, I guess.
I'd be curious just to see what you think you have for a product over
Yeah.
there.
Okay, let's go have a look.
It's not rotten.
Oh, okay.
So what do you think caused it to split off into two, Keith? Weevil killed a leader, and we got two.
Something killed a leader way back when I was gross beak pecked at it or something.
Damn birds.
And that hole goes all the way through both ways.
I think it just pulled out. I mean, it could be rotten. Because water would have gotten down in that seam.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be just pitch. There's some right there, but
I mean, that's a tiny, tiny little bit of rot.
yeah. Anyway, it looked like something had kind of gotten in there, but
But water definitely would have gotten in there in this, down in here.
Yeah, it's a little hard to say how long that's been broken off, but it's been some
yeah,
time.
And this might have, I don't know, that could be, I don't know.
I stuck a stick in there. It goes, I think, all the way through.
Yeah, it's
But
not-
It went a long ways the other way.
It's not rot anyone would defect for. I mean, it will probably rot, probably would have rotted over time because water's going to get into it and decay
Right.
fungus could get in there, but that's not what rotten pine looked like. It's red colored.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I'm sure there's some rotten wood in there, but that's pretty sound.
You gotta work
I was just curious if there was some sort of interesting injury that happened there.
I think it's just the way it was formed. The trees growing together, and that's a place like this where water
Tree
collects.
physiologist to explain why it's not what it sounds like. Anyway, I was curious. It was sort of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, once they snap off like that, nothing keeps the water from entering the end of the grain.
It went as far as the stick I had went. So I started hitting resistance, but I think there's a lot going on up here.
Could have been excavated by ants too. It doesn't look like an ant trail. Who knows? Something.
Yeah, it'd be, they'd have to find somebody in there, yeah.
You guys, I'm going to assume most of you already know this, but leaving big chunks of wood in the forest is by no means a waste of wood. It's actually really, really important for loads and loads of reasons. holds moisture on the ground. It helps retain carbon. It makes an outstanding seed bed in later years when these will eventually rot on the forest floor. Make a nice place for another seed from another tree to fall and land on and sprout. They call them nurse logs.
Like more hemlock.
Hmm?
Like more hemlock.
Hemlock, yeah. Or pine. Or any other number of species. So yeah, we don't mind leaving big chunks like this behind. We don't get paid for it, but there are other benefits.
Anybody have any final questions?
They make drumming logs for partridge to sit on.
All right. Yes, exactly. Once they decay a little bit farther
Yes.
along as well.
Also, the ROTC guys can hide behind them.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm sure they were really excited when that fell.
Imagine they're glad they moved.
Let's thank Keith, Charlie, and Robin for their time today.
Well, thanks for coming.
And don't forget, you have a lab report due next week, and you are good to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Friday.
They will deduct us for that.
What do you call that? Like a seam.
Well, it's from breakage, where that thing split off and it stressed the log down in there. That's just broken. I did.
Longer than my finger.
There it is. We didn't see that one. So is that going to knock it out of selection into one? One knock?
You have that one, you might, stand by that one. That one ain't there for a knot. And you got another black knot over here.
All right, so we're not even going to get a 10-foot select out of this, are we?
You can figure it like that, though. You can figure it if it did have a 10-foot select, what the difference is.
So if you just go for like a 12-foot
So what are you allowed to have in a select?
Half-inch pin knot,
So if you had,
or one. So usually they'll give you one knot.
if you had that, and not that, it'd probably be all right.
But you got that, and then isn't there something on the other side?
There's a black model,
Yeah.
a small indent right there, but they might not count that. Just that one bigger knot that's on there probably would keep it from being a select.
I don't think they discard face, do they?
I don't think so. Not one.
Okay, so if you guys didn't see this, we've got a sort of a surprise knot back down here. I was thinking that we had at least a 10-foot select log out of this, but we don't. We've got a really big dead stub down there, just at around 8-ish feet.
That was at the ground, right?
Yeah. So we didn't necessarily see that one. I didn't see it. So that takes that butt log back from a select that's $600 a thousand back down to $400 a thousand. That kills the value of that log quite a bit. So now we don't really lose so much by making it longer, do we? Because it's already probably a grade 1. It doesn't get too carried away up here, so
What are the grades, by the way?
1, 2, and 3.
One, two,
No, there's select, there's grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and pallet.
They don't want pallet. Well, pallet grade log is
one thing they don't make out of them is pallets.
So they're allowed, basically the grade 3 is 5-inch knots either side, and then a bunch bigger than that is pallets.
So I would have tried to maximize the value of this by taking a shorter, better grade log, but even the shorter log isn't going to be a better grade, so that whole theory just went right out the window. So now we got to go back to Robin's idea, and we're just going to maximize the volume of this thing. We're going to get every board foot we can.
So that's just one of the variables when you're trying to measure logs and you're trying to go for the best grade. We didn't see that. As Charlie said, if we would have cut it at 10 feet, it would have been a lot better cutting it at 12. We wouldn't have had that waste on the other end.
Yep.
Now we'll maximize the tree. We'll cut a 12 here, cut a 16, and then just see what it scales out at. I still think this is going to be probably a number 1.
Yeah, they'll probably give us that, even though
It's got some knots, and it's probably more than it should have for a 1, but it's a really nice straight log, good quality on the butt. So if I was scaling this log, I'd give the logger number 1 on that.
And the top?
2. That's a number 2 for sure. We're getting close to a 3. So many knots on it.
Okay, so we'll cut it at 12, and scale it up and run the numbers and see what we got.
So you made some preliminary marks.
I did,
What,
and
what is this at?
that's at 10. That's at 10.6. That's at 12.6. It's cut off at 29, but it's also marked at 27. So if we decided to go with that 10-foot one, I could cut off at 27. We'd have a
So one other thing to think about, most of the mills, they say 6 inches of trim, but 4 inches is allowable. If you got a good taste and you got a good eye, I never cut 6 inches on my second log. My first log, I'll give them 6 inches on that, just because you've got an uneven cut on the bottom. When I make a nice straight cut right here, and I go up there and give them 6 inches, to me I just gave them 2 inches of wood. When you got trees this big around, you give them 2 inches of wood every time, that adds up. So I'll go to 4-inch trim on my second cut instead of 6-inch trim, but always 6-inch trim on the butt because you might have an uneven cut on that. For cutting trees this big, you'd be surprised how much you gain in a day's time by 2 inches of trim, 4 inches instead of 6 inches. If you can make nice straight cuts, they never complain about it.
right.
Just watch when you cut it off, it's probably going to roll.
So where does the name bucking come from? I always am curious. It seems like an odd name.
Oh, we might have to Google that.
Yeah, he's going to push that. Yeah, we can do that. He wants it on some skids. If we had a pulp pile, we could roll that into there, and that could get chipped up with the rest of it. I'm just as happy to leave it in the woods. Turns out it's a fairly important part of the ecosystem. Sir Amber can tell you exactly why.
Or Sean Fravor.
Yeah, he's
certainly
even
could.
better at it.
He'd be even better. Yeah.
We got a humongous defect right here.
That hole goes all the way through. Whoever was asking.
So, yeah, we got a 16-foot log right to here. I mean, that's going to go as a grade 3, but I mean, we sell grade 3s every day. So now we're getting into the part of the tree that's all red knots, but they're enormous. This tree really isn't a very good tree. Probably said that a few times, right? All right, we got about 8 inches up to here, right here. Hey, how fortuitous. We got just about 42 feet right to here. That's actually pretty lucky. 41 and a half feet. Anybody guess what we got at 41 and a half feet? What logs those are? flogger math again. 41 and a half is one of the numbers I look for. It's a 16 and 2 12s. So yes, absolutely. We'll lop this thing off right here, limit all the way up to 41 and a half, pop the top off, and yeah, we'll wind up with 5 logs out of this one tree. And they'll all be 12s and 16s, is what the mill really wants. 16s they like because they get lots and lots of boards out of them. 12 footers we really like because you can put 2 of them together end on end and still fit them on a self-loading truck. Very handy. You can get more 12 footers on than you can any other size. Makes the most efficient use of your truck space. They can only go out to 25 feet. So once you put a 16 on, that row's done. Ta-da! Rinse and repeat. Any other questions? Anything else I can help anybody with? I don't expect you to sit around and watch me limb this. It's fairly boring.
I don't know. We were just saying how fun it is to sit and watch you work, actually.
Hey, I'm here till 4:30. Your wish is my command.
So yeah, I don't know. Do you have any questions? I don't know where's Keith and Rob and
He's hiding in the middle of the trail.